My name is Laura Bennett. I am 30 years old, and until recently I thought I knew exactly how my life was going to look. I live in a quiet part of Madison, Wisconsin, the kind of city that feels safe and familiar. Tree-lined streets, local coffee shops, friendly neighbors who smile but don't ask too many questions. It's a place where people plan their futures carefully and rarely make sudden, dramatic decisions. At least that's what I believed, until I almost made the biggest mistake of my life. This is a story about family, trust, and the moment when love quietly turns into a warning. At the time, I didn't know the warning wouldn't come from a stranger, but from the woman who raised the man I loved. I was engaged to be married in 3 months. His name was Ethan Miller. From the outside we looked perfect. He was charming in a calm, confident way. Not loud. Not flashy. The kind of man parents instantly trust. He worked in finance, wore neat button-down shirts, and always arrived on time. When he smiled, people relaxed around him. My parents adored him. "You found a good one, Laura," my father said more than once. "He's steady," my mother added. "That matters." I believed them. I wanted to believe them. Ethan and I met 2 years earlier at a mutual friend's engagement party. I wasn't even supposed to go. I was tired, stressed from work, and honestly a little burned out on dating. But I went anyway. And there he was, standing near the window holding a glass of water instead of alcohol, watching the room instead of trying to impress it. We talked for hours that night. About small things. Movies we liked. Places we wanted to visit. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened. When I left, he didn't try to kiss me or rush anything. He simply said, "I'd really like to see you again." That felt rare. Respectful. Safe. Our relationship grew slowly, comfortably. No drama. No loud fights. Just routines. Sunday breakfasts. Evening walks. Planning instead of guessing. When he proposed, it felt like the natural next step, not a surprise. His family welcomed me warmly, especially his mother, Margaret. Margaret Miller was a woman everyone described as strong. Early 60s, always well-dressed, always composed. She spoke carefully, smiled politely, and kept her emotions controlled, like she had learned long ago that showing too much could be dangerous. From the first day we met, she was kind to me. Not overly affectionate but attentive. She remembered small details. My job. My favorite tea. The fact that I hated crowded places. "You'll fit into this family just fine," she told me once, her hand resting lightly on mine. At the time I took that as comfort. Looking back, I realized it was something else. Before I continue, I just want to say this. If real-life stories like this speak to you, you're not alone here. And if you feel like sharing, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. As the wedding plans moved forward, our families became more involved. My parents invited Ethan and Margaret over for dinner. Ethan's father had passed away years ago, so Margaret was always present, quietly watching everything. She watched how Ethan spoke to me. She watched how I reacted to him. She watched more than she spoke. Once, while Ethan was helping my dad in the garage, Margaret and I were alone in the kitchen. I remember she looked at me for a long moment, then asked softly, "Are you happy, Laura?" I laughed. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? She nodded but didn't smile. "Good," she said. "That's important." At the time I thought nothing of it. The first strange feeling came a few weeks later. Ethan and I were reviewing wedding expenses at my apartment. Venues, catering, flowers. He handled the numbers confidently, quickly closing tabs on his laptop whenever I leaned too close. "Everything okay?" I asked casually. "Yeah," he said too quickly. "Just boring finance stuff." I didn't push. Trust was supposed to be easy between people about to get married. But small things started stacking up. Mail addressed to Ethan that he never opened in front of me. Phone calls he took outside. Stories about work that felt rehearsed. Nothing concrete. Just unease. Then there was Margaret. She started calling me more often. Asking how I was feeling. If I was stressed. If wedding planning was overwhelming. One afternoon she invited me to her house for tea. Ethan said he had a late meeting and wouldn't join us. Margaret's house was neat, almost too neat. Everything had a place. No personal clutter. No photos of Ethan as a child. Something I found odd but didn't mention. We sat at her dining table. She poured the tea slowly, carefully. "Laura," she said, her voice calm but heavy, "marriage is not just love. It's truth. And sometimes truth arrives late." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She looked at me, really looked at me as if deciding whether I deserved something. You remind me of myself, she said quietly. Before I married Ethan's father. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. Is there something I should know? I asked, half joking, half not. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then shook her head. No, she said. Not yet. I didn't ask what she meant. And that silence would cost me weeks of peace. That night I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words. Not yet. I didn't know then that this was the beginning of the end. That the woman who raised the man I loved was silently trying to protect me. And that the life I was planning so carefully was built on a lie that was already starting to crack. After my visit to Margaret's house, I tried to return to normal. I told myself I was overthinking. Wedding stress does that to people. It makes every comment feel heavier, every silence louder. Ethan noticed I was quieter than usual. You okay? He asked one evening as we sat on the couch, the TV playing but neither of us really watching. Yeah, I said automatically. Just tired. He nodded, kissed my forehead and went back to scrolling on his phone. The gesture was familiar, affectionate enough to calm me for a moment. But something about it felt practiced, like a habit rather than a feeling. A few days later my mother called me. Laura, sweetheart, she said, Ethan's mother stopped by the house today. That surprised me. Margaret? Why? She said she was in the neighborhood, my mom replied, a little unsure. She brought a pie. Very polite. But she asked some interesting questions. My stomach tightened. What kind of questions? My mother hesitated. About your finances. Whether you and Ethan were combining accounts already. Whether he helps you with money. I sat up straight. What did you tell her? The truth, my mom said. That you're independent and careful. Why would she ask that? I didn't have an answer. That night when Ethan came over I asked casually, your mom stopped by my parents' place today. Oh, he said, not looking up from taking off his shoes. That's nice. She asked about our finances. He paused for half a second. Not long enough to be obvious. Long enough to be noticed. She worries, he said. She always has. I wanted to believe that. But later when Ethan fell asleep beside me, his phone lit up on the nightstand. A notification flashed briefly before disappearing. I remember thinking, no message had ever made my chest feel this tight before. Unknown contact. Did you handle it? I didn't touch the phone. I didn't wake him. I just stared at the ceiling, my heart beating faster than it should have. The next week, wedding planning intensified. Meetings with vendors. Guest lists. Seating charts. Everyone kept saying the same thing. You must be so excited. I smiled every time. Margaret, however, grew more distant. She didn't call as often. When she did, her voice sounded tense, like she was holding something back. One afternoon she asked if we could meet again. Just us. We sat in a small cafe downtown. The place was quiet, the kind where conversations stay private. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, staring into it for a long moment. Laura, she said slowly, how well do you really know Ethan? The question felt heavier than it should have. I know him well, I replied. We're getting married. She nodded, but her expression didn't soften. I thought I knew my husband well too, she said. Before I married him. I leaned forward slightly. Margaret, if there's something you're trying to tell me, please just say it. Her lips pressed together. She looked around the cafe, then back at me. There are things about Ethan's past, she said carefully, that he doesn't like to talk about. Like what? Like patterns, she said. And debts. My chest tightened. Debts. She inhaled sharply, then exhaled. Financial ones. Emotional ones. He has a habit of borrowing trust. I sat back, confused. Are you saying Ethan is lying to me? Her eyes filled just slightly. I'm saying you deserve to ask questions before it's too late. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Her voice trembled for the first time. Because once you're married it becomes harder to leave. And I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. Before I could ask more, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and stiffened. I have to go, she said abruptly, standing up. Please. Be careful, Laura. She left before I could stop her. That evening I confronted Ethan gently. Did you ever have financial problems? I asked, trying to sound casual. He laughed. Too quickly. Who told you that? No one, I said. I'm just asking. Everyone has debt, he replied. Student loans. Credit cards. It's normal. Are you hiding anything from me? He looked genuinely offended. Why would you ask that? I apologized. He hugged me. But the hug felt tight, almost defensive. 2 days later, I received a message on Instagram from a woman I didn't know. Hi Laura. I'm sorry to contact you like this, but I think you should know the truth about Ethan. And in that moment I knew someone else had survived the version of him I was about to marry. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. I didn't open the message right away. I sat there for a long time thinking about Margaret's words, my mother's unease, the unknown text message, and the man sleeping peacefully beside me every night. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just anxiety. Something was wrong. For the first time I felt something shift inside me. Not panic. Not fear. Awareness. I realized that the worst part wasn't what I might discover. It was how long I had ignored the feeling that led me here. I understood then that once you start asking real questions, your life never goes back to the version where you felt safe pretending. I sat on the edge of my bed for several minutes, staring at the unopened message. My phone felt heavier than usual in my hand, as if it already carried the weight of something I wasn't ready to hold. Part of me hoped it was nothing. Another part of me already knew it wasn't. Finally I opened it. The message was longer than I expected. Come, careful. Almost apologetic. The woman introduced herself as Rachel. She said she had dated Ethan shortly before he met me, right before he moved cities. She explained that she wasn't trying to cause drama, and that she had hesitated for weeks before reaching out. She said she only did so after seeing our engagement announcement online. Her words were simple, but each sentence landed hard. She said Ethan had asked her to co-sign a loan in her name, promising he would pay it back. She said he had convinced her it was temporary, that he was between investments. She said she trusted him. She said she was still paying off that debt. She said when she confronted him he disappeared. Changed numbers. Changed cities. Changed stories. At the end of the message she wrote one final line. I'm not angry anymore. I just don't want this to happen to someone else. I felt cold all over. When Ethan came home that night I watched him more closely than I ever had before. The way he set his keys down. The way he avoided eye contact when I mentioned finances. The way he smiled when nothing was funny. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead I met Margaret again. This time she didn't hesitate. We sat in her car parked in front of her house, the engine off, the air heavy. I know you've been contacted, she said quietly. This always happens when he gets serious with someone, she added. My breath caught. You knew. She nodded slowly. I was afraid you would be. I showed her the message. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired. Ethan has done this before, she admitted. Different women. Different explanations. Same result. Why didn't you stop him? I asked, my voice shaking. Her hands tightened around the steering wheel. Every time I tried before he convinced people I was overreacting, she said. I tried. For years. But he's careful. He knows how to appear stable. Responsible. People believe him. Why stay silent? I whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. Because he is still my son. And because I was once the woman who believed him too. In that moment I didn't see a warning mother. I saw a woman who had survived the same mistake. That was when she told me the truth. Ethan's father had been the same way. Charming. Intelligent. Financially reckless. He had drained accounts, ruined credit, and left Margaret to rebuild everything alone. She thought she raised him differently, she said. But some patterns hide quietly. Until they don't. I went home that night and sat alone in my apartment. I replayed every memory. Every conversation. Every excuse I had accepted without question. The wedding was 6 weeks away. The dress was hanging in my closet. The invitations had been sent. And yet something inside me had shifted. I wasn't imagining things. I was finally seeing them. What followed was the strangest part. Nothing changed on the surface. Ethan still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. He still asked what I wanted for dinner. He still talked about the future like it was already guaranteed. But I felt like I was watching him from a distance. Like I was standing just outside my own life, observing it. Every ordinary moment felt heavier than it should have. Every smile felt slightly delayed. Every "I love you" sounded rehearsed even when it was familiar. At night, I lay beside him and listened to his breathing. I wondered how someone could feel so close and so unknown at the same time. I realized then that once trust cracks, love doesn't disappear immediately. It lingers. Quietly. Uncomfortably. I started noticing the effort it took to pretend. The careful tone of my voice. The way I avoided questions instead of asking them. I wasn't protecting the relationship anymore. I was managing it. And that was when I understood something painful. If staying requires shrinking yourself, leaving becomes an act of survival. For the first time since Ethan proposed, I stopped planning. No spreadsheets. No vendor calls. No checking seating charts. I moved through my days on autopilot, smiling when necessary, answering questions with practiced ease, while something heavy and quiet settled inside me. That quiet was clarity. I decided not to confront Ethan immediately. I needed to be sure. Not emotionally sure but factually certain. I needed to know if the man I loved was capable of telling the truth when there was nothing left to hide behind. I asked him calmly if we could review our finances together. Just to be prepared, I said. Marriage stuff. He agreed too quickly. We sat at my dining table. He opened his laptop. Numbers appeared. Accounts. Savings. Investments. Everything looked clean. No missed payments. No history. Almost like parts of it had been erased. Can I see your credit report? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He froze. Just for a second. Why? He asked. Because we're building a life together, I said. I think we should be transparent. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. Let's do that later. It's complicated. That was my answer. The next day I drove to my parents' house. My mother knew something was wrong the moment she saw my face. She didn't ask questions. She just poured tea and sat across from me. I told them everything. Fully. The message. Margaret's confession. The patterns. The lies. My father listened in silence, his jaw tight. When I finished, my mother reached for my hand. You don't have to be strong right now, she said softly. You just have to be honest with yourself. My father spoke last. A wedding can be cancelled, he said. A lifetime with the wrong person is harder to undo. That night, I lay in bed next to Ethan, listening to him breathe, and realized something painful and freeing. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I realized I had already been alone. I just hadn't admitted it yet. I was afraid of staying. The decision didn't come with drama. No tears. No panic. Just a deep, steady certainty. I called Margaret the next morning. I'm going to end it, I told her. She exhaled shakily. Thank you, she whispered. For choosing yourself. 2 days later, I asked Ethan to meet me in a public park. Neutral ground. No walls to hide behind. I told him I knew. At first he denied everything. Then minimized it. Then blamed stress. Then claimed he was going to tell me after the wedding. That was the moment I stood up. There will be no wedding, I said. And there will be no future built on lies. He begged. He promised change. He cried. I walked away. Canceling a wedding is not a quiet thing. Even when you try to be discreet, the news moves faster than you expect. Phone calls. Messages. Confused voices asking the same question in different ways. What happened? Are you okay? Can this be fixed? I kept my answers simple. It's over. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I didn't owe anyone the details of a decision that saved my future. Some people understood immediately. Others didn't. Ethan's friends were mostly silent. A few sent short messages saying they were sorry things didn't work out. None asked why. That told me more than words ever could. My relatives were louder. My aunt called and said, but he seemed so nice. A cousin asked, are you sure you're not overreacting? Someone even suggested, all men have flaws. Marriage is about compromise. I listened politely. Then I stopped answering. The hardest conversation was with Ethan's extended family. They were shocked. Confused. Some were angry. Margaret, however, stood firm. She called me the night the cancellation became official. You did the right thing, she said. Even if no one else says it. That was when she told me the last part of the truth. She admitted that when Ethan was younger she had covered for him. He paid off debts. She smoothed things over. She protected him from consequences because she thought that was what a good mother did. But all I did was teach him that someone would always clean up after him, she said. I failed him. And I almost failed you. There was no anger in her voice. Just acceptance. After that, something unexpected happened. The shame I had been carrying quietly lifted. I realized the hidden truth of this whole story wasn't just about Ethan's deception. It was about my own pattern. I had spent my life being reasonable, understanding, patient. I trusted easily because I wanted harmony more than clarity. This time I chose clarity. A week after the breakup, I took the wedding dress out of my closet. I didn't cry. I didn't destroy it. I simply packed it away. It belonged to a version of me who believed love should feel stable even when it felt wrong. I wasn't that woman anymore. Margaret and I met one last time. She hugged me tightly longer than before. Thank you, she said, for breaking the cycle. As for Ethan, I never saw him again. And I didn't need to. After the wedding was cancelled, time didn't stop. It never does. People went back to their routines. The city stayed the same. My phone buzzed less each day. And slowly the noise faded. What surprised me was not the sadness but the clarity that followed it. I started remembering Ethan differently. Not with anger but with precision. I remembered how he avoided deep conversations about the future unless he was controlling them. How every story about his past lacked detail. How he never spoke badly about anyone, but also never took responsibility for anything. Problems just happened to him. Circumstances were always at fault. I realized I had mistaken calmness for honesty. When I replayed our early dates, I noticed how often he mirrored me. My values. My opinions. My plans. It had felt like connection. In reality, it was adaptation. There was one memory that stayed with me. A few months before he proposed, I had asked him a simple question while we were driving. If everything fell apart tomorrow, what would you do? He smiled and said, I'd figure something out. I always do. At the time I found that reassuring. Now I understood it differently. He didn't say how. He didn't say with what. He didn't say with whom. Just that he would survive. I also thought about Margaret more often. She called me once more a few weeks later just to check in. We talked about ordinary things. Weather. Work. Nothing heavy. Before we hung up, she said something that stayed with me. You know, she said, Ethan was never cruel. That's what made him dangerous. He didn't hurt people out of malice. He hurt them because he needed them. That sentence explained everything. Ethan didn't see people as partners. He saw them as solutions. And I had almost become one. A month later, I took a short trip by myself. No big reason. No dramatic escape. Just a quiet weekend away in a small lakeside town outside the city. I walked a lot. I ate alone. I watched couples pass by without envy. For the first time in a long while, I felt fully present in my own life. One evening, sitting by the water, I asked myself a question I had never asked honestly before. Why did I stay as long as I did? The answer wasn't love. Not entirely. It was hope. It was habit. It was the belief that patience would eventually be rewarded. I understood then that I had been raised to be agreeable. To smooth edges. To give people the benefit of the doubt even when doubt was screaming for attention. Ending the engagement wasn't just about Ethan. It was about choosing a different version of myself. The woman who listens when something feels wrong. The woman who doesn't wait for proof before honoring her instincts. The woman who understands that love without accountability is not love, it's risk. When I returned home, I didn't feel broken. I felt recalibrated. The city looked the same, but I didn't move through it the same way. I started answering questions honestly. Yes, it was hard. No, I don't regret it. Yes, I'm relieved. People stopped asking after that. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. But it became mine again. And that was enough. Turning 30 felt different after everything ended. Not dramatic. Not tragic. Just quiet in a way I had never experienced before. The kind of quiet where there is no one else to blame, no crisis to solve, no role to play. Just me and the life I had paused while preparing for someone else. I returned to my routine slowly. Work in the mornings where I smiled and answered emails like nothing had changed. The gym in the evenings, where my body moved forward even when my mind lagged behind. Sundays at the grocery store, standing in familiar aisles, realizing I was no longer shopping for two. From the outside, my life looked normal again. Inside it felt like I was learning how to stand on slightly new ground. I didn't fall into a deep depression. I didn't stop functioning. But I did experience something quieter and harder to explain. A dull emotional weight. Like living a few seconds behind myself. I wasn't sad all the time, but I wasn't fully light either. There were moments, unexpected ones, when grief appeared. Seeing a couple argue gently in a cafe. Hearing someone complain about wedding planning. Finding an old note Ethan had left in a book. Those moments didn't break me. They just reminded me that endings echo longer than people expect. Late at night, doubt visited often. Was I too harsh? Did I demand too much? Would things have worked if I had waited longer? But every time I questioned my decision, I returned to facts instead of feelings. Facts don't change when emotions do. And the facts told the same story again and again. I hadn't imagined the cracks. I hadn't exaggerated the warning signs. I hadn't walked away out of fear. I walked away out of clarity. Trust changed shape after that. I didn't stop trusting people, but I stopped offering it automatically. I no longer filled uncomfortable silences with reassurance. I no longer explained other people's behavior to protect my own hope. I became observant. Patient in a new way. Not the kind that waits endlessly, but the kind that watches. Friends tried to set me up on dates. Some gently. Some insistently. I said no most of the time. Not because I was afraid to love again, but because I refused to rush my healing just to look fine on the outside. At 30, I understood something I wish someone had told me earlier. Starting over isn't frightening because of age. It's frightening because you understand consequences now. You know what emotional debt feels like. You know how expensive silence can be. You know how easy it is to lose yourself slowly. So I chose to be alone for a while. Not lonely. Alone. I traveled by myself. I took a class I had postponed for years. I learned what my days felt like when they belonged only to me. And somewhere in that space, without forcing it, I felt my center return. I wasn't rebuilding a life. I was reclaiming it. For a long time I thought this story was about the man I almost married. But it wasn't. It was about the woman I almost ignored. Almost a year later I met someone. There was no spark that set the room on fire. No instant certainty that made my heart race. We met quietly, without expectations, and that simplicity felt almost unfamiliar at first. What stood out wasn't who he was. It was how he behaved. He showed up when he said he would. He remembered small things without being reminded. When something was unclear, he asked instead of assuming. When something bothered him, he spoke instead of withdrawing. He wasn't perfect, but he was consistent. For a long time I had believed love was supposed to feel intense, urgent, all-consuming. Now I understood that safety feels quieter than excitement, but lasts much longer. Did I trust him easily? No. And I didn't apologize for that. I paid attention to patterns, not words. I noticed how I felt after spending time with him. Not euphoric, not anxious, just steady. Balanced. At ease. There were moments when my past tried to rewrite the present. When a delayed text made my chest tighten. When silence felt heavier than it needed to be. But instead of panicking, I paused. I reminded myself that healing doesn't erase memory. It teaches you how to respond differently. For the first time, I didn't abandon myself to keep something alive. I also learned that being single for that long had changed me. I no longer feared solitude. I didn't fill my schedule to avoid being alone with my thoughts. I had learned how to sit with myself, how to enjoy my own company without distraction. That changed everything. I stopped asking, will this work? And started asking, does this feel right for who I am now? I don't know where this relationship will lead. I don't know if it will become a lifetime or just a chapter. But I know that whatever happens, I won't lose myself again trying to hold on to someone else. Walking away at 30 didn't mean starting from zero. It meant starting from wisdom. I didn't lose time. I gained awareness. I didn't miss my chance. I protected it. If you're listening to this and you're afraid that choosing yourself will leave you behind, please understand this. You are not late. You are not difficult. You are not asking for too much. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pause a life that looks right to protect a life that feels true. Walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you listened. It means you paid attention when something inside you quietly asked for honesty instead of comfort. I used to believe that endurance was love. That patience would eventually fix everything. Now I know that love without clarity slowly teaches you to disappear. Choosing yourself isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause. Most of the time it happens in silence when no one else is watching. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if it reminded you of a decision you're afraid to make, or one you're still healing from, I hope you remember this. Clarity is not cruel and self-respect is never a mistake. If you feel like it, you're welcome to like the video and subscribe for more real stories like this. And if you want to share, tell me in the comments. What is something you wish you had trusted yourself about sooner? This was my story. And this time I chose myself.